Hello and welcome to Beyond the Code, podcast series covering the latest in tech and global tech talent. I'm Maulik Seller, founder and CEO of CodeMonk.ai, and today I'm joined by Munir Parikh, engineering leader at Amazon Web Services, looking after billing and data infrastructure, quite a critical role generating billions for Amazon. In this episode, we are going to talk about the daily life of an engineering manager, the concept of two pizza teams and ideal team structures for fast-paced software delivery. We'll talk about hybrid or remote teams and how to optimize for cost versus skills. Lastly, we'll cover some of the technologies ripe for disruptions across many of the industries that we know of. And without wasting too much time, let me introduce Munir, right? I think, Munir, you're currently working as an engineering leader at AWS.
That's
Why
correct.
don't you tell a little bit about your background? How do you really get to your current role?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Um, by the way, thank you for having me. I'm actually originally from India, and I was born and brought up in city Ahmedabad, in the west coast of India. But I've been in US for close to 18 years now. And in last 18 years, primarily my career has been split between two companies. One is General Electric Healthcare Division, which is G Healthcare, where I was in Midwest for 8 years. And then since last 10 plus years, I've been with Amazon. I was actually in Seattle for 6 years, and last 4 plus years, I've been in New York City office. Now, we'll talk about Amazon a little bit more because that's a little bit recent past. But I joined as an individual contributor, and a couple of years in Amazon, kind of during my discussions with my mentor, my manager at that time, conversation about like what do I want to do in the long term, and I felt leading development team, building solution, and making impact through team is something I love, and that's where we decided to kind of switch to people management role. And since then, I've been in people management role, leading different teams in different part of US, and then currently in the AWS in the commerce platform division. I lead multiple teams in the billing data space. And what we do is we build data infrastructure, which is required to process all the AWS events and the usage data that come in, and which ultimately becomes what we call AWS bills. So the computation requires a lot of data, a data infrastructure, and that is what I lead. In fact, one of my teams is in London today.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
good.
then I have teams in New York as well as a team in Seattle.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Funny enough, you mentioned about Ahmedabad. I was in Ahmedabad only a couple of days back. I had a quick trip to India, where Ahmedabad is. And I went there after a long time, and a lot has changed. The city
Yeah,
has completely transformed
yeah,
in last, 5, 6 years
yeah.
that I know of. But just a small side talk. Our team at CodeMonk, we all have been working remotely in a completely distributed manner, and this was the first time I actually met quite a lot of those people in person, because quite a few team members we have in India. So when I was going to India, we had a small team get together. Everybody
Nice.
traveled from different places, and we everybody met each other for the first time. So I think that was a good experience, like an experience quite strange, because
Yeah,
you know these people, but you don't know them. You know,
that's true.
you have been working together for many years, and you're meeting
Yeah,
them for the first time, and suddenly, hey, you know what? You look different on the camera. Your personality is slightly different than what I
yeah.
imagined it to be, and so on. So it was quite an interesting experience for us.
That's
Uh,
correct. Actually, that's one thing I always feel that being remote has its benefit, but then building this type of interpersonal relationship, knowing someone personal side of it, when you meet them in person, definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll talk about remote in a bit, but
Yeah,
why don't we talk more about your current role? What
sure.
does your day-to-day activities look like being an engineering leader?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who work remotely, generally they tend to be senior to, like,
Mm-hmm.
intermediate to senior software
Mm-hmm.
engineers.
Yeah.
And generally the engineering leader roles normally are in office or in a
Right.
hybrid setup. So
Right.
we
Right.
would like to know, okay, what
Yeah.
does your day-to-day activities look like?
No, that's a good point. So currently, I'm kind of in hybrid role. So I
Hmm.
kind of work from home couple of days. we all have personal responsibilities, a family, so it kind of hybrid, which 3 days in office, 2 days in at home, actually works out okay. But from the leadership perspective, I always feel like I'm a true believer of servant leadership. And as part of that, my focus is always like staying in touch with the team, SDMs or the leaders of the individual two pizza team, what we call it, working with them closely, diving deeper into some of their challenges, and ultimately looking for opportunities where I can help. I can escalate, or I can maybe help them brainstorm some of the solutions. So my focus, a lot of focus during the daytime is actually on helping teams. And that's where I would say if I divide my daily responsibility, and again, each day is different. So it's not a separate, a specific template that I follow every day. But if you kind of abstract it and maybe take a month, like where do I spend my most of the times? So I would probably bucketize them to the three buckets. The first one is helping team, like a lot of 101s, a lot of skip level 101s, team dive deep. I do have a separate mechanisms where I talk to each team separately every week, for some time, dive deeper into some of the things that might have heard, educate myself about the things that teams are doing, and then in general, helping them in anything that probably help them grow. The second part of my work, I would probably divide into strategic aspect. Amazon being a lot of document driven or writing culture, we end up writing and reviewing a lot of documents, a lot of strategies before we kind of actually go and execute it. So we spend a lot of time in reading and writing document, kind of thinking big sessions. So we call offsite sometime, where we just kind of talk about like what is that big that next we want to do. So I spend a lot of time on that. So I would say probably the second bucket is that where you're thinking strategic, you're doing things which kind of is really, really long term, like 3 years, 5 years from now. And then the third part, which no one can take away, is the tactical part, right? Like day-to-day activities, like there are firefighting. Like when you have multiple teams, maybe one teams are having some issues or some escalations are going on. So you need to help, you need to be there with the team. Sometimes we have this mechanism called correction of error in Amazon. You might have heard about it online. So we spend a lot of time in COE, or correction of error. And there you need to spend time with the team reviewing their deliverables and see if we have right fixes or preventive things in place, so any error that happened would not happen in the future. So there are a lot of tactical aspect of the job that you have to still remember. But even if you ask me to prioritize, maybe this is the priority order. We're helping team, thinking strategic, and then doing tactical stuff to kind of make sure that the current state of our services is healthy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You mentioned about two pizza team structure. What is that?
Yeah. So that's very well. As such, it's not a kind of anything that Amazon invented, but the term particularly is kind of very very close to Amazon. And Jeff Bezos used to tell that your team site should be um, where you can feed them with two pizzas or two large
Okay,
pizzas. So
large
that's
or
where
American large or the UK large. The sizes may be very different.
yeah, so I think I would say probably it's American large because there are pizzas which are very small, but in general, like this large pizzas that you have, probably it's two pizza team, and what it means is that ideal team size is anywhere between 6 to 8, and with a leader, or we call SDM, like some companies call engineering lead or some module lead or whatever, but we call it SDM, software development manager. So a team of 6 to 8 and with an SDM is kind of a usually preferred team in Amazon. And size of the team, what it helps with, and we'll talk about the structure or ownership of the team, but the size of the team, what it helps us with is that it kind of promotes right amount of conversations because it's not too big, but at the same time it's not too small that if that team is owning a service, they cannot support that service, because Amazon being more of microservices oriented organization in general, we try to give ownership of a service or a responsibility to that team. And even you might have heard that we do our on calls too. right? So if there is something wrong with the service, it's the same team which is going to support. So we have a kind of usually one on call every time who is keeping eye on our dashboards and alarms and monitors to make sure that everything is healthy. So that 6 to 8 kind of gives us that, where if you are on call, you'll probably get your rotation from every 6 to 8 weeks, right? Because you are rotating it. And at the same time, it's a small enough that when you're even in the meeting, it's not like you don't know each other, so you can build that personal
Yeah.
relationship with other team members.
We done some research around that actually on the team size. So
Mm-hmm.
on CodeMonk, we have this feature where the talent can self-organize as a full
Mm.
stack teams amongst themselves. And we did not want it like, let's say 2 people or 3 people team,
Yeah.
or a 1 person team, in a worst case
Right.
scenario. So we done a research. We were not sure what should be the like, the structure of these teams that we should support on the platform. And majority of the like engineering leads or senior tech leads uh, preferred a team on a lower end of four, four
Mm.
below four very rarely, but
Yeah.
on the lower end four, and on the top end about 15, 16.
Mm.
But 6 to 10 was the most common,
Okay.
answer, that okay, team of six, 8 or 10.
Right. Right.
10 again, would be
Yeah.
considered a large team.
Right.
But like, that was the number we got
Yeah.
from our own survey of,
Right.
the senior folks, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite in
Yeah.
line with what you guys
And
are
I have
doing.
actually, to be honest, I have personally managed a team of 10 at some point, like while I was directly line level manager.
Mm,
And at some point it becomes difficult, right? Because now as a manager, you want to do 101. So now we have 10 101s in a week. That itself is like a lot of time. And then when you're promoting people, then now you're talking about doing their individual assessment and helping with their career and all of that. That just becomes sometimes too big. But then there is always a place where you cannot split that team immediately into five. But as company grow, that 10 will become 12 maybe at some point, and then at that time you logically split that into kind of two sub teams. But that's how kind of progress happens with the team. But you're right. I think 8 is really a sweet spot in my opinion. But then you can have smaller teams, especially in certain company, in certain situation. The type of work requires a really, really small team of people to kind of just stay focused and deliver. But yeah, it's usual guidance. This is never a silver bullet.
yeah. Um, Now we talked about the team size, right? But what do you think is a good composition of the team? Like, what
Mm,
different roles a good
right,
engineering team would be performing
right,
for a fast-paced delivery,
right,
not really waiting onto each other, not really being
right,
blocked by each other. You'll always be blocked by somebody, right?
right, right.
Uh, but in your opinion, what do you think is the best team structure?
Yeah, I think usually the best team is the self-serve team, right? Like they have self-sufficient, they do not have to rely. But even the seniority and juniority wise, also we always say that if it's like a 100%, if you think about, maybe around 40% of is your like relatively junior talent, your 40% is relatively mid-size or medium career talent, and then maybe 20% is a little bit more senior talent. And that way the juniors would learn from the seniors, and then they will be able to coach others so they can grow as well. So that composition from the experience wise works out better or good for us. So it's like a team of six. You might have 2 or 3 engineers who are entry level, 2 or 3 are kind of in medium, and then the 1 or 2 are kind of more senior. Now from the role wise or the job responsibility wise, it depends. Like some of the work we do, it's like a hardcore backend data computing, data storage, where we do not have opportunity to do a lot of full stack work, right? So there we have all of most of the engineers are backend engineer, and there also are backend engineer with really really large distributed computing experience and interest, because interests matter. But if it's a full stack team, then yes, you would have maybe a 1 or 2 front end engineers, and then 1 or 2 full stack, and then maybe you have a couple who are kind of more back end. So the composition from from the experience or the skills wise would probably have a little bit more standard template, but from the roles and responsibility wise or their specialties wise, it depends on the team that you are leading.
Yeah. What about QA? How many QAs you will allocate per team?
So in Amazon, we are kind of a truly believer of automation.
Hmm.
So a lot of our testing in general is kind of automated. Of course, there are teams which are again customer facing, which require some of the experience. There you would have a lot more QA. But for example, none of my teams right now today have any QAs because the work we have is a lot of backend and it's a CI/CD with the integration test and automated testing. And some functional testing is done, but that's usually kind of done by the engineers themselves. So we do not always have QAs, but there are, of course, teams in Amazon. Like if you talk about some of the Alexa organization or some of the front end based, even AWS has consoles and others, they all would have QA. And there, a lot of time we have a separate organization who are expert in QA. So if a senior leader would have a organization which is QA organization, and then that organization would usually own end-to-end testing because usually service level testing is done automatically, but
Hmm.
then when end-to-end testing comes you need either some automated tooling or at least QA or QAE is doing some testing which is
Yeah.
end-to-end.
Yeah, talking of that, QA and just generally quality assurance within software engineering. In my experience, I've got in one team we had like a pair, like a developer and a QA
Mhm.
working together. So QA doing or we used to call the developer in test, whose job
Right.
is to write all the script, the automation script, and
Yes.
the other developer will basically write the code
Right.
to pass those tests. And they will
Right.
keep switching between the two. So one sprint,
Mm.
one of them would be doing development, the other one will
Role
be doing,
playing.
yeah, like the automation, test automation,
Right.
and the following sprint they will switch around.
Okay.
So that was an interesting setup that I experienced. And then at one organization, they did not have like QA within the team. The
Mm.
developers were responsible to write their own test and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that the code passes all the tests. But
Right.
on the merge, before going to production, they used to have a separate QA environment
Yes.
where they will run like a QA sprints,
Right.
and they will run like a one sprint behind the dev. So all the
Okay.
dev work gets completed and pushed into QA. They
Yeah.
do all the
Yeah.
testing in that
Right.
bi-weekly sprint, and then they'll push it out to production. So it was quite an interesting one. That particular organization, this is BBC I'm talking, right? I mean,
Okay.
they completely different engineering practices, and they had this belief that they should generally have just a very high quality of software
Mm-hmm.
put out to the end user,
True.
and a little bit waterfall is process, but still try to really
Yeah.
ensure that there is a faster feedback loop from the QA back to dev, and fix issues before they go out to
Yeah.
live audience. Uh, but I
And I
found
think
it a
the
little bit low. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I think in the teams that we had interaction with QA, the setup was like what you just explained. The first one is a little bit involve QA early enough,
Mm,
and then work with them even during design phase. But again, at that time also we had a separate QA teams who were working with because they had understanding of end-to-end pipeline
mm.
versus individual service owners who would just know about their service and they will make sure that their service operates as per the specification.
Yeah. I normally prefer a triangle setup, as in two developer and
Mm.
a QA,
Mm.
basically forming a trio and working on like within the
Yeah.
sprints together. So in a team of six, I would normally have four developers and two QAs.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the normal structure that I personally prefer. I'm not sure
Sure.
whether that's efficient or not, but that's my
Yeah.
personal preference normally.
And that
Uh,
is the beauty of in general engineering, right? Like you can adjust based on the situation. These are all now options available to all leaders. And then
hmm.
depending on your requirements, you can always make those adjustments.
Exactly, exactly. Now, just coming to like team building, or creating
Hmm.
uh, uh, like a high-paced, high quality, high engineering tech team. What are some of the tips that you leverage to attract some of the best
Mm.
talents out there? Especially you are based in New York,
Right.
and where probably the competition for talent might be quite high. What
True.
what what are some of your tips?
Yeah. And I would probably combine this question with hiring and even retaining, right? Because
Mm,
we always say that as a manager of an employee, every 101 is your another opportunity to keep that employee with you, right? Or we call builders. So keeping your
mm,
builder with you, you have every 101 to keep them.
mm,
Because they are in demand. There will be a lot of companies will be looking for good talent even in this time, and so that's where your priority should be keeping them with your team as well, and of course if required hire more. Now the question, since question is more on the hiring, let's maybe start with hiring. And I think hiring right talent is definitely the first most important thing, irrespective of where you find it, because they need to be the engineers or good engineers or builders get inspired or get pumped up when they work with more smart and good engineers, right? So that hiring right people and hiring good quality people should be one of the thing. It's not just hiring. So that good talent is very important, and that's why some of your hiring practices that even Amazon we have does help, making sure that whoever we are hiring are kind of raising the bar for that level and for that job. So that's the first. Now to hire right talent, the one of the thing that worked well for us in the past, and for me personally I've seen, is referrals, whether internal referrals or external referrals. Like your engineers are in general connected with a lot of people, even within Amazon or outside Amazon, and a good engineer bringing some saying that, hey, I work with this guy or this girl, and they are really really good. We should see if we can hire them. I would probably rely a lot more on their words than maybe looking for a best resume out there. So referral is another tool that we leverage a lot. And then if we are in the need, we ask our engineers and say, hey, we are looking for this specific skills. If in your network, whether internal or external, you know someone who can be a good fit, please bring them. And that it does two things. One, it kind of confirms that the person they are bringing, they at least have already earned their trust, because you are not going to get someone who you don't trust. And then on the other side, it kind of give them opportunity to say what type of engineers or builders we are hiring for the team. So referral is another tool. In general, flexibilities and different options, even moving around in Amazon, and this is where kind of we may say segue into more of a retaining too, but just providing flexibility to those engineers who are coming. Like there might be always company policies on certain things, but within those policies and boundaries, you can provide a lot more flexibility to your team members, as well as especially somebody's you are hiring. If somebody is coming and say, hey, I understand that you have kind of a hybrid culture and I'll be expected to come to office, but maybe I will need 3 more months before I can relocate, and we'll be like, fine. We are willing to accommodate those flexibilities, right? So providing those flexibilities, or in general, if an engineer who kind of been working, doing really great for 2 years in the same team, just providing them options that, hey, we have this other teams or other type of work that's also really exciting. And if they are really good and they want to kind of try that out, we encourage them. I personally changed probably 5 or 6 teams within Amazon. Even I changed city too, from like Seattle to New York. So that providing those flexibility and different options is super important. And then last thing, I always say that building a culture which is promoting like bias for action, which is one of the Amazon's leadership principle,
mm,
like providing, moving, making progress. Like it cannot be always perfect. Even some scrappy solution which solves customers' need, promoting that culture actually gives sense of accomplishment to engineers a lot. Then it's like waiting for a waterfall or full life cycle project which takes like 9 months to go to production, and then after that we don't know whether customer is going to use it or not. So
yeah.
promoting that bias for action and scrappy solution is another thing.
Just, you talk about that refer and earn and that, like talent referral. We had a, like, when before founding my company, I, like every place I worked, I always had like a few people in my team that I wanted to work more. So when I was changing the job, I was like, hey, I wanted to work that guy, with that guy, or I would like to bring that guy with me in the new organization. So I had a hunch about that. And so we launched a talent survey on LinkedIn and also in our talent community. We have about 80,000 plus developers in our community. And we launched a survey for them, asking the very same question that, oh, hey, would you want to, when you move the job from one organization to another, would you want to bring some of your colleagues with you? And about 80% plus said yes, that we would like to bring not everybody, like some of our colleagues together when we change it off, or together we want to, pick on new projects as we go along. Hence, we launched. That was one of the biggest driver for us to launch our Teams feature, that we wanted people to indicate that who they want to work with. And, funny enough, that was one of our, that flywheel feature that literally accelerated our talent acquisition. Every talent we sign up on our platform, they get this option of creating a team and invite other people that they want to work with. And that kind of just literally 10x year on year talent growth for us, basically. So I'm a strong believer of that, good people attract, better people.
Good talent.
Yeah. You also mentioned, I picked up that you talked about relocation. So is it it's Amazon, or let me not ask about Amazon, but generally, what do you guys do? Do you prefer in office, hybrid, or remote team setup?
I think, of course, during pandemic, whole world had to pivot to complete remote, and there were reasons for it. But in recent past, we have seen industry, not only Amazon, right? Industry kind of move a little bit more towards hybrid approach. Now, this is one thing where I would say it kind of it depends, right? Because there are teams or companies which are in certain stage where having everyone in a room working kind of day to night and just kind of solving complex problem requires maybe everybody in the room in place. But at the same time, there are teams, there are individuals, it's a relatively established teams. The type of the work doesn't require a lot of collaboration, and you can work remote. Then actually those things kind of can be done better remote. You are kind of saving a lot of commute time, energy, and kind of help people do their work-life balance harmony. So this is one place where, in general, industries even today kind of split. Some companies are fully kind of on site. You need to be in the office, and some companies we are remote first still. But Amazon kind of in general, and this is kind of open public policy, so I'm not kind of revealing something which is kind of internal, is that we are hybrid teams and we promote collaboration. So there are days and there are things or activities that we prefer that you do all together in the office. But at the same time, we also understand that people have appreciated part of being remote, and that is where working remote is also supported, but not completely. And this is where there is a debate that individual being remote brings productivity to individual, but then there are also arguments that the kind of team productivity sometimes is better, or teams are able to deliver faster things when they are meeting in person and then building that relationship. So we are kind of hybrid, and I personally, if you ask me my opinion, I like the hybrid one better. Especially it's really good for engineers who are early in their career, kind of in the office, working with senior engineers, being with the leaders and doing whiteboarding and all that does help them kind of expand their skills, grow their skills faster. And I've seen that happening. But at the same time, experienced leaders or experienced workers or engineers, builders, they know how to manage stuff remotely, and they have done probably equally well whether they are in the office or in remote world.
Remote. Is remote in country or remote anywhere?
Now, currently in Amazon, it's remote in country, or at least because again, remote anywhere has a kind of a different angles to it, right? We need to look for what is that you are optimizing for by having a team, especially when talking about 6 to 8 people. Now having that team split across time zones, because mostly when we are talking about out of country, it will be like some people here, some in your states, some people in Europe, or maybe some people in Asia somewhere. So that whole thing kind of brings additional challenges. So we need to look for what is that we are optimizing for. If we are optimizing for efficiency, with this time zone difference and all that, will always bring a lot of challenges, right? At the same time, if you are optimizing for talent, then the talent is basically, maybe there is a specific talent you're looking for and that is available only in certain part of the world or certain individuals, and then at that point you have to adjust to that. And then if there is also an angle of optimizing for cost, but if you're doing that, then you can't expect efficiency or good talent, but then you have different reasons to optimize for cost. So it's something what you are optimizing for. But in standard team, I would say in a single two pizza team, having multiple folks across country would make things really will slow us down for sure.
Okay, cool, interesting. I have a slightly different take over there. Now, in terms of you said about
Yeah.
optimizing for talent or cost, right? I think my approach generally is to optimize for the attitude basically and
Mm-hmm.
the culture. Because I give you a small example.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you a question, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Tell me about top designers, like fashion designers. Where do you think they come from?
Uh, Maybe Paris,
Paris
France, or
or
maybe New York
uh,
or London.
Italians,
Yeah. Yeah.
America, like
Yeah.
Armani,
Italian. Yeah. Yeah.
Gucci,
Yeah.
all
That's
those things.
true.
So generally, I have seen that Italians or Southern Europeans, like Spanish and Italians, they're very good in terms of creative sense,
Mm-hmm.
like design and all those things, right? Generally, like Americans, they're very good with like fast paced, decision making, again communication. They're really good with communication and presentation and all. Generally, like Central and Eastern Europeans, they tend to be very detail oriented. They follow the instructions well. Again, given to their past in where the Cold War past with the communism and all, they tend to follow instructions very well. That's ingrained in their behavior, and so on. So that's what I look for. That for in a team, for certain roles, I want risk
Yeah.
takers. I want people to like break rules and like just literally challenge the norm, right? Whereas in some teams, I want them to follow the rules. I don't want to experiment too much. I just want them to make sure nothing is broken. Just keep calm and carry on, kind of approach. So depending on that, I tend to
Right.
build different teams
Right.
in different locations. Like again, I'm from India, like yourself,
Yeah.
and I have done a lot of work in India as well. And again, in India, the attitude tends to vary a lot
Mm-hmm.
from where you're hiring people for.
Right.
So I think that is what I normally optimize for.
Okay.
And then the cost. Cost is always there, but I generally believe that if you want to, you can't compromise on
No.
quality and the outcomes, for the cost. If you want something cheaper, it's
Yeah.
only going to bite you later, and it's
Yeah.
mostly going to be quite expensive later on, right?
Yeah.
And anyways, but we have found some really good talent, in different countries. Right now I have a fully distributed setup with
Mm.
people working in, I think, maybe 6 countries, if I'm not
Oh,
wrong.
wow.
Yeah. Uh, but what we optimize for, you mentioned about the time zones and all, which is definitely is a challenge
Yeah.
when people are in different locations. But imagine, let's say you have a team in US, you have 4 time zones, right? So
Yeah.
you still got to work across multiple time zones,
True.
right? So what we do is dictate like a core working hours.
Mm.
That hey, for example, GMT, 10 to 4 is our core working hours, and regardless of where you are, you got to be available during that time
Yeah.
for your team, basically. So we
Right.
try to like there's a lot of flexibility, but we still try to create like a baseline framework that okay, this is
Yeah.
like a rule that you cannot break, kind of.
Yeah, and I think what you just mentioned is very important, irrespective of whether, even not only in kind of country, right? Even if you're remote, even within the same country, or even the same team, even if you are in the same location, defining those team norms with specific rules and say, hey, this is the time all of us are going to be available. And then because there are individuals who want to start their day early, like
Yeah.
maybe there are early risers who want to start their day 7 a.m. But then there are people who start their day 11 a.m. So within even same city, you now have 5 hour lag between two individuals on your team. So that what you decide, what you mentioned at the end is actually super important, that you need to have those norms within team.
Cool. I just want to ask a slightly different question, right? AI is doing big rounds nowadays.
Yeah.
You don't have to divulge any sensitive information from
Right.
Amazon, but asking, right? Do you guys use AI in your delivery processes?
Yes, so we have started exploring that. I would say I would not say, and I would not give again a lot of details behind that, but we have definitely started exploring that. Of course, some of the services you have heard about from AWS itself, like Code Whisper or even Code Guru and all that, which kind of provides you some of the developer productivity utilities. So that is already kind of started adoption internally too. Of course, there are internal initiatives that we are working on, even in the space we are operating, to kind of make better life for our customers. But in general, I see across industry, there has been adoption, and that adoption is kind of rapidly increasing across board. Some of the use cases I can definitely see, even the few companies that I'm kind of mentoring or coaching or helping, like the automated AI chatbots or answering some of the common questions for our customers, or in general, kind of automating your day-to-day workflows is something AI is definitely accelerating a lot, and that has impact on the work we do internally too.
Yeah. I'm also exploring some good AI tools, right? I mean, recently I experimented with, I forgot the name, but it was an AI tool to generate the wireframes, basically, high fidelity wireframes in
Oh,
Figma.
okay.
You give the instruction that, okay, I want a dashboard with XYZ features, and I tried completely random features, like, not like a business dashboard or anything,
Right.
like really weird situation that, hey, I want to build a dashboard for this, and it
I
was
see.
actually very good. It actually created the basics fairly good.
Wow.
I was pleasantly surprised.
So is it like is it a plugin to Figma, or is it a separate thing which Figma
It,
provides, or?
no, it's a separate tool. It's called Use Galileo.
Okay.
I just remembered. Use
Okay.
Galileo.ai,
Okay.
and you just tell it, like, you
Okay.
give input that, okay, I want dashboard to have XYZ
Right.
features.
Yeah.
It will generate the
Yeah.
entire user journeys
Right.
in the tool itself, and then you can download that as a design system
Nice.
into Figma, and then make whatever changes you need to do.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like a groundbreaking tool, because generally that process would take us about a week, and I
Right.
can see that the week's worth
Yeah.
of work was done within like few minutes.
Right.
So I was pleasantly impressed by that, and something that I'm like now keen to adopt in our internal team. Plus, there are a few other tools we are using as well. We are also having a lot of AI stuff on our
Mm-hmm.
platform.
Nice.
But moving off from AI a little bit, is there
Mhm.
anything else that you're seeing can have massive
Yeah.
impact?
Yeah, I've been actually following a lot AI, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, if AI is going to free up a lot of bandwidth from individuals, like what are the things that we can do, or is kind of happening, which we should accelerate, right?
TikTok
So
Reels?
one of the, sorry.
To making TikTok Reels?
No, no, that's a good one. No, I think in general, I think I was like looking at what are the, like when there was a wave of digitization or big data computing and automation, like what are the industries or the segments that were not kind of, that did not move fast enough, right? And this is where two or three came up kind of quickly in my mind. Like, so the healthcare systems are still kind of relatively backward. So that's why kind of investing and then kind of redeploying some of the bandwidth or even leveraging AI tools on modernizing healthcare systems or healthcare in general, life science and healthcare is going to be accelerating. Education is another one, like the way our schools and even universities, some of the things are happening has not changed for years. Even a pandemic did kind of brought a little bit of a digitization or virtualization of this education, but I feel that that space has kind of a lot of opportunity to kind of catch the wave. And then government portals or government, how our governments are operates, they're also that leveraging technology is kind of not greatly done well. And that's where I think those are the areas. Definitely the digitization of these three industries is one thing. The other one is I personally kind of very excited about, and I'm kind of following closely, is the whole interplanetary travel and the kind of our ability to go to Mars and landing on Moon and all that stuff that's happening, the SpaceX and Blue Horizon and all those kind of private organization exploring different ways to kind of travel to space more affordable and maybe accessible to all. That's industry I feel is going to be fun to watch. The VR and virtual reality, which was kind of course it has its own pros and cons, but I feel with some of the AI tooling and AI thing available, VR or augmented realities is going to be a space where more and more innovations will happen. And then last one is of course the whole green energy and EV side of the world. There we see when all governments across world are kind of now pushing more for it, promoting it. Even United States recently passed a kind of or proposed a legislation to kind of reduce some of the uh, the promoting EV in next 10 years.
Yeah, I think quite a lot you covered there, right? But in that like what you call the sustainability transportation, right? I think
Yeah.
I'm quite a bit about the hydrogen fuel
Mm,
cells, right? I think
right.
battery I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity
Yeah.
around that. But hydrogen fuel cell is
Hydrogen. Yeah.
something that I'm quite a bit, and I
Yeah.
definitely want to try. Toyota, they launch
Yeah.
this fuel cell car. I've seen it on the road moving here in
Okay.
London,
I see.
but I would like to buy one
Experiment.
at some
Okay.
point. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think the Japanese, like there I see difference between the approach from the American and some of the European automakers versus the Japanese one. I think Japanese are kind of focusing a lot more on the hydrogen based, so it's
Hmm.
going to be interesting to see where we land. But irrespective of that, in general, the greener energy is going to be something we'll see a lot of innovation, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, cool, cool, cool. All right. I mean, I'm just mindful of our time. And I think our conversation can probably carry on for another 15, 20 minutes. I'm not sure, maybe longer. But I think maybe our time for us to wrap this one up. But I would like to ask you a few questions that we
Sure.
normally ask, like every guest we have.
Uh-huh.
Feel free to answer them,
Yeah.
as you like,
Yeah.
but these are generic ones, right? So,
Sure.
personally, to you,
Mhm.
who do you think there is one person or an event that motivated you the most in your life or career?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about the personal side of it, my dad, of course, has a big impact on who I am and how I operate. But in general, sports, I'm a big fan of sports. I follow a lot of sports, and I can watch any sport anytime. And one of the sport which, of course, we being Indian is very close to is a cricket. And then Sachin Tendulkar is someone I feel has inspired me a lot. And when the whole cricket, like when you believe like there is a pressure on you, you are the one like whole nation is kind of relying on, and then taking that pressure and then still performing is something is amazing talent, and which probably a lot of people don't realize till you are in that like stage where the whole 100 crore people is kind of expecting you to perform, and then you end up performing. So that's something I learned a lot from him, how to handle things when you are under pressure, especially as an individual. Um, but yeah, I would say Sachin Tendulkar is someone has I've been always following him, how he handles situations and off ground or on the ground or on the field when he's playing.
Yeah,
So
no, definitely, genuinely a genuine gentleman, I would say. I'm not a big follower of sports or cricket in particular.
I
I'm
see.
probably one of the Indian out who doesn't watch
Okay.
cricket a lot. But never mind. I have watched. his biography actually,
Mm.
Sachin's biography, and there's something that quite interesting came out in that. So apparently, during playing cricket, most of the time he would not get bowled out, right?
Yeah.
But if he did, he got bowled out in any of the occasion, post match, he will practice the same bowl
Yeah.
and the shot, like 1,000 times,
Right.
10,000 times until
Right.
he's sure that he will never be bowled out again.
Right.
He'll just keep practicing the same
Right.
shot, for as many days as needed,
Yeah.
to be confident that this will not happen, never happen again. And
And that is one of the thing I think sports teaches us, right? Like the
yeah,
perfection, like practice, practice, and practice. That's it.
yeah. And I was like, how can you like just do one thing for like continuously for so many
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
how can you what kind of mindset do you need for that, how much
Right.
focus you need to do that,
True.
that was like amazing for me, and that is one thing that I really learned. I think I
Mm.
personally really learned from him,
Okay.
after that biography that I
Right.
watched.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, another question.
Uh-huh.
Who is one person, living or
Uh-huh.
dead, that you would like to meet if you can?
Oh, wow. I mean, I would probably go back in history. Because I'm in general, I like history and
Hmm.
reading about history. I think one person, if it's just one person, then there are many actually, but Alexander the Great, I think he's one. I would be definitely curious to just sit next to him and think, understand his thinking. When you're talking about someone who is kind of ruling, starting to rule kind of something like Macedonia in like 20 years, and then expanding it to probably one of the biggest, largest empire when he turned 30. So it's just like when you're in 20s, even if I compare myself, my thought process and what I was thinking of in 20s versus what he would be thinking, I would definitely like to go back and sit next to him and understand. It's like, what was your thought process when you said, I'm going to kind of start fighting with Persia and expand in the Persian territories and then keep expanding all the way, in fact, northwestern India and 30 years. So in 10 years, he kind of just expanded that much and just learning those strategies, how you are kind of being a so small country, but still envisioned to be this big in 10 years and then delivering it. I think that's something, some really good lessons to learn from him.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think in my 20s, I was like total loser, to be honest.
Exactly.
Right. Anyways, who do you think we should be inviting to this podcast, in your opinion?
That's like,
Can
I
be
mean,
anybody.
it should be Elon Musk, I guess. I think
Interesting.
he's, go ahead.
We had somebody say that as well earlier.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think he has. I mean, of course, everyone has positives and negatives, right? Nobody's perfect, but I think his idea about some of the things in future is, it always amazes me. Of course, there are a lot of things probably I would probably not agree, but at the same time, some of the things like when you were talking about when he was talking about Teslas, or now he's talking about SpaceX, all of this thing is like really, really 20 years, 30 years, 40 years in future. So just hearing him probably would be a fun.
Okay, cool. Interesting. We'll try. Let's see if we can grow our podcast to a level where he'll be
Sure.
interested to come in. Would be good. But
Sure.
yeah, we had another guest as well mention about him that, okay, try to get him.
Okay.
Well, we
Okay.
will someday. Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, I think it has been a great pleasure, I would say,
Yeah.
to talk to you and discuss
Yeah.
some of the practices that you follow at Amazon. And I would like to thank you for making the
Absolutely.
time and joining this podcast with us. So, to our audience, if you want to listen more of this podcast, then please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify, or also to our newsletters. And if you're an employer who's looking to hire or build the best tech teams, then sign up on our platform and see how you can leverage AI to find gaps in your team and recruit talent accordingly. And if you're a talent, then why don't you sign up as well on our platform and uh, invite your colleague to create a full stack team and get hired together? That would be exciting. So thanks a lot to everybody, to you, Munir, as well, and tune in soon for the next episode. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.